Welcome to the Gamification Quest podcast, brought to you by Sententia Gamification. I'm your host, Monica Cornetti, and here we dive deep into the transformative world of gamification. From our origins in 2014 as Gamification Talk Radio until now, our quest remains the same: to put an end to dry, dull, and ineffective corporate training and adult education. Because your learners deserve better. Are you ready? Let's get questing. Hi, my name is Monica Cornetti, and welcome to the Gamification Quest podcast. Today, I have a colleague on the call with me, and I want to say that we're really good friends, and we just haven't had the chance to do that part yet. So we've met actually at GamiCon, and well, we might have met at a class earlier than that, but Pradeep instantly just impressed me with the quality, like the depth of his programs. It wasn't just something that was just this surface. You could tell that there had been much design, thought, application, playtesting that it went into it. So Pradeep U.N is my guest today. And this past year at GamiCon in New Orleans, his project called Stories won by the judges. It was selected as the best overall use of gamification for adult learning programs. And that is a pretty significant accomplishment. So Pradeep, I want to talk about the project, but I also want to talk about what we're going into with your Stories Wisdom website. I want to make sure I get that right. Storieswisdom.com, STORIES, wisdom, WISDOM.com. So I want to talk about that probably most importantly, rather than just the project and the win, although kudos on the win. And I don't know if you got your hard copy of I have the blur on, Training Magazine. You're in there featured. So very good. Welcome, Pradeep. So glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you, Monica, for the great welcome. It's been great even interacting with you and the GamiCon family twice, Austin and at New Orleans.
And I just remember how from the very first time in Austin, people just were, I'll use the word flocking, but they just wanted to be next to you, right? Like talk with you, ask you about your project, delve in, tell us your trade secrets. So let me just give you a little bit of background of Pradeep so you can hear his lineage here of where he came from, and what he's bringing to the table as far as education and experience. So he's the founder and CEO of the Stories and Wisdom Company. He transforms organization into purpose-powered playgrounds. Love that. With an alchemic blend of storytelling, gamification, and social learning, which is so critical. Formerly a senior director of inclusive innovation at Microsoft, Pradeep was inducted into the Microsoft Innovation Hall of Fame in May of 2022. A diversity and inclusion advocate, he empowers industry leaders to foster employee inclusion. I did not know this, and I just chastised him for it because there's no way I would have let those two get past me in New Orleans. But he is the father of twin first graders, which could not be, and is there anything more fun than that? And he has delightfully narrowed down his hobbies to French braiding. That's quite the skill. Very good. He has an MBA from Carnegie Mellon in Pennsylvania, an engineering degree from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. So quite the pedigree there, Pradeep. Talk with me about, I know it's your baby. I know, but this is your creation. Talk with me about this origin story of this company that you've started, Stories and Wisdom.
Yeah, so the way this project actually came about is really, we started with customer discovery back when we were talking about digital transformation. But now it's AI, like a new tool suddenly having people going like, what is this? What can I do? And they get flustered or get carried away by the technology. But really all they have to do is like talk about, here's my actual problems in life or work. and how can I actually start to solve for it? And that, in the hands of salespeople, again, they are trying to make quotas for a technology quota, and they're not literally having human conversations. So we wanted to get to discovery. Let's humans talk about their problems, and we can figure out the technology side of it. And gamification and storytelling blend, I saw as the way in which you can enable people to just relax. Because gamification helps people in terms of distracting because of the entertaining and the structure to it, but you can still be playing a role and then getting to a quest task and get to the next layer. Otherwise, we'll be asking silly things like, what keeps you up at night? The answer is you should be sleeping at night and not be up. And if it's up at night, you better have a kid who's 5 years old or younger.
Right.
Other than
Somebody
that,
who needs you
if
desperately.
work is
Yeah.
keeping you up at night, change your job because that's not worth it. Sleep, right? So we ask those kind of questions to get to some problem that's keeping up at night. It shouldn't. Nothing is worth it. But the real thing you're going for is like, what are you trying to solve? What is your quest? What are you trying to achieve? And then what are your milestones? So that to me is language that games build in with narratives and a
Good.
fellowship that comes together. Now you're talking game mechanics, not the 200, but at least a couple of them to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
it. From
Yeah.
there was a pivot towards workplace during COVID, which was where kids show up on a Zoom call with a customer and it was fine. Board meeting discussions where suddenly the spouse walks in with like, I need this. What are you doing? Are you taking a mask? And that blend led to a very different kind of how do we balance mental health, family needs, and work, which previously we kept all of those worlds like in the George Costanza language of the worlds are separate, they don't collide,
Right.
but they were colliding. And then the third pivot for this origin was when DEI conversations were mainstream after George Floyd got murdered, when people were going with like, I can't deal with this quota for this quarter, my people don't feel right. And whether it was George Floyd or after that the Asian and many other, we were now again beginning to have these kind of identity community discussions in the context of how a daily milestone work is just like, it's just a job, it's just a salary. I have a bigger identity thing that I need to stand for, and I have the courage to speak up. So the tool that we had initially for customer discovery, now you can bring it to enable discussions with family needs in the context of work. Also in terms of identity, community, race, and other perspectives in the context of work and rationalize so that leadership could be inclusive. Now that if you remember that timeline, all that happened within 12 to 18 months, one after another.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the cauldron with which the origin stories for the game card, which we were initially having, which is stories that we went through, led to Stories and Wisdom, the company where we started doing a lot more digital work to enable this in a hybrid world where you can enable conversations with customers, with employees, and also your communities.
Yeah. Yeah. So when your program won the award, I find it really interesting, and this might be so a judgment, a frame that's incorrect, but you created this stories experiential game, and it was used in a government entity, wasn't it?
Right.
And they were using story cards in this government entity to share real life.
Right.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
government entity, and we are dancing around the name because they have
Right. And I know,
not
yeah,
want us to
I'm
share,
not
right?
saying it.
Uh-huh. But this is a government entity where they acknowledged that their leadership could be less toxic, let's put it mildly. And they acknowledged that this was something that they wanted to get run. And another metric that they did have was they actually had actual lives being lost as a result of this through suicides. And And their research led to go with connectedness within their teams could help alleviate it, and actually that's how they would get there. But what I just said is social science, a bullet point on a
Yeah.
PowerPoint is shared in a video, and you go like, sure. But when somebody's is literally metaphorically on the ledge, they're not thinking of some training that they took forced or not forced in a mandated class
Right.
to look at, like, that's how I shall take care of my mental health. No, that doesn't pass through you. So it has to be part of your culture, institutionalized, practiced regularly, and a lived experience. And the story cards to enable people to share that is one half, because that's not a conversation, that's one part of the handshake. Then how do you take that story when you're as listeners? Do you give the space and the grace? And then how do you react back, even if it doesn't make sense to you? Like, that is not just saying we shall be empathetic, that's actually saying practice it. It's hard because one person is trying to have the courage to be vulnerable. Others have to have the grace to let them be vulnerable, but potentially even try to do that. And I'm just giving you the step-by-step design of increasing psychological safety and trust in teams without saying we shall increase psychological safety in teams.
Right.
How? I don't know.
Okay.
This is
It's
how
a
we should
bullet
figure that out.
point. Yeah, there's a bullet point right there on the side. Now do it. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
So that was the mechanic of the game, where, like, if you did that, they did that. That's role design systems that with games we do. But you keep doing that for round one and round two and round three. As you play a game, guess what? Well, you got a medal. We didn't have medals or stars or levels process, but we did actually see people beginning to get closer, because these stories were not fictional. They were real stories of individuals.
Hmm.
So in a way, that's where, when I was writing the description for the game, that they wanted a narratives. I'm like, well, I see narratives all the time, but it's personal narratives. I don't know what they are, but the facilitation of the game and the design allows people to bring in their narratives, which are very different, and yet the organizational narrative starts to build and move forward. And with a different organization at a different time, the same set of cards builds a very different narrative that I didn't design or create. So
Right.
compared to any other game where it's like, okay, you played once, that quest is the same for any other individual, and then you're done. Here, the quest was just different with different people. But bringing it back, the connectedness of that team was more cohesive. They were closer. And that's where we're continuing the next set of follow-up work with that organization, and they want to scale it out even more.
Yeah. Very good. And so for those of you who are listening or watching, if you've worked around creatives, you hear phrases or bits and pieces of stories, and you don't have any idea what the actual context or meaning is, it plays in somehow. And so I've heard things like a swarm of starlings gave you an idea, a bento lunchbox, but that's the beauty of creativity, is that, oh, it could be like this. So tell me about swarm of starlings. What's that about?
Okay, so this was in a decade ago, actually. I was in Australia in Cairns, and we were going to the Great Barrier Reef. Uh, and then there was this whole murmuration in the sky. So it's literally a phenomenon of 1,000 of birds, starlings, that fly together, coordinated, and they keep moving, and they even fly low. So you, like, you put your hand up and you think you can touch one, but then they just move like in a fluid
Like a, yeah.
manner, and they're very coordinated. Now, again, this could be the beverage of choice. I was on a vacation at that point, but when I saw that, I the movie in my head was like, this was similar to organizations where these are individuals and teams, and then there's another team, and then there's another team, and then there's this company that's trying to, like, pivot, shift while there's geopolitical other natures happening in, and then they're just moving along. But then two questions that happened in my head was, first, who's the boss here? Who's telling them we shall go that way? Here's our destination, and you shall all follow. Here's your role responsibility. Because clearly that wasn't the case. Yet they seem to be moving in a coordinated, synchronized manner, but it was not linear. So it was there. The second question was, how do they not crash into each other when they're moving this fast? So that again, it's easy to tell a story looking backwards, but when I combined with the previous set of things that I was telling you during the COVID, I realized I started going deeper on this research because the questions were seated in that kind of frame. And research shows that even across those thousands of starlings, only 7 starlings, so you pick a bird, they can only see the next 7 around them. And they coordinate visually across those 7. And when you start extrapolating it, then the next set of 7 or cohort go around it. So on actually our game design, when you actually play, and I know you played this at least once with us, we only focus on 7. You cannot bring in more. It's only 7. So it's that group, the starling set of team that we brought in, saying across this 7 cohort is when you'd want to share your stories in an intimate manner. And if we do this across your division or your team or over a period of time, we believe, similar to starlings from nature, the social learning across the teams will help you pivot and be more resilient to any external effects, so forth.
Really
so that's where the starling metaphor started getting more real and became part of the game design. And we just started like, well, nature got it right. It's just taking us a while to figure it out. So let's just put that design straight into our game.
That's very good. So I want to talk about storytelling and organizational strategy, because again, I think I was just working with a group of leaders for most of the day today, and I always say I wish there was a better word than storytelling, because as soon as I say storytelling, you get visions of what? A grandfather with a pipe by a fireplace. I don't know, or a man but you're not getting the real essence of what we're talking about. But before I go there, tell me, just give me in a sense, what's the bento box got to do with it? What is that?
Oh, the bento box.
Yeah.
So the bento box, if it's actually a longer part, but the bento box is this box with different pieces of food there. And I see it as a metaphor for user-centered design, which everybody follows. So the user here is the person who's trying to eat, and their goals are, well, nourishment. And therefore, I want to eat, you have your starch, rice, and then some protein, and then seaweed, and then some salad and so forth. But then the user wants to be given some level of freedom so they can choose what they want to eat. Meaning, I can just have all rice. I can have a little bit of rice and then some protein. I can just have your protein or salad and so forth. And therefore, as designers, or whether we are doing games or products, we go with like, we took care of the user. Nourishment is taken care of. They can eat. They can go eat with at any point, and nutrition is also made. Now, we actually took the approach of that's missing the whole point. User-centered design is broken. Now, I say that because it's like, is your real goal to get nutrition, and that's what you're doing? Like, that's how cars are. Like, you fill a car with gas so that it can run. It doesn't care because it doesn't have a heart. We do. So then you go with like, is the user-centered design with bento box the way we should do design? And we went with like, no, that's how it's getting done because it's easy to do. Jobs to be done. Humans have jobs to do, and therefore you do. And that's easy to organize, but it's just horrible from a soulful human perspective. So we went with, what's the metaphor here? And to us, that was the lazy Susan. Circular table, people are seated around, and then the same food. You'll see proteins, you'll see a salad, seaweed salad, and then you'll see starch, rice or noodles all around it. But then now you have people around it. You might see the same grandpa, grandma, the grandkids, parents. Then you go like, why are they coming together? Is it somebody's birthday? Whose birthday is it? And then let's say it is the younger daughter's younger birthday. And then let's just say there is a last piece of chicken that girl likes. But then there's also the elder son brother there, and then he sees the kid reaching out for the chicken and he takes it. Now what do? Do you chastise the kid saying you shouldn't do that? But then, or do you actually go with like, no, you should, it's fine, and then tell the daughter to like, hey, it's just chicken, let's just your problem, let it go. My point is, now the same food is in a context across time with some social norms, rules, and its potential for life learning. That is what food was meant to be. It's
Okay.
not just fuel. Yes, the fuel is all going to also, that should be a checkbox, but it's the social construct of how people are coming together to do something with some norms in place. So we literally rejected the bento box user-centered design approach to do design work for this game, and then went to like the human-centered, human-to-human interactions. Like, what will the system do so that the human-to-human interactions will be amplified, and the actual game is just like transparent. It just recedes to the background. And that was the context setting for our wisdom platform. Like, we actually wanted to go like, can we get insights from what people are doing, but they're not really thinking about, I'm trying to solve something, I want to give some survey answers. We should just get that information by allowing people to just have a human interaction. So it was the bento box was a very core design ethos that we understood deeply to reject and then
Yeah.
form a different approach so that we can focus our design around it.
Yeah, for what you were designing, that's an excellent analogy and the metaphor of the lazy Susan. I also love how you bring in that real life, older brother stealing the chicken, not stealing, taking the chicken, and now there's something that needs to be solved here, right? So
Yes.
how are we going to do that? All right. Talk with me. I want to hear about what kind of feedback you get when you try or talk about connecting storytelling with a corporate strategy. How are you making that connection?
Yeah. So with the storytelling, a lot of the storytelling has been focused around marketing and then literally propaganda, like taking the stories out with the product. The way we are approaching storytelling is a tool that looks very innocuous, but radically changes the space in a very rigorous manner. What I mean by like the storytelling could be an act of reconstruction, because we are constantly in a world of reconstruction going on, whether it is a reorg because there is a new leadership in place, new strategy that comes in every year. Here's our annual strategy alignment, then a reorg because a new leader happened or a budget shift happened or you had to respond to a market or a social context. And then there are ripple effects that actually hits at a human level because somebody's career, budget, project, job got
Yeah,
shifted. But those are all like collateral damage that we just go through so that the non-living entity of a company can move forward at the expense of humans. That's the
humans.
world
Yeah,
we live in. The storytelling aspect of it is where we can actually go there and bring a space where we can have that discussion, while at the same time have a better way for organizational strategy setting, meaning the reorgs largely are done through spreadsheets and some level of assumptions, but we actually have a space for the lived experience to share and then assimilate it through analytics and AI, which is what we are doing at the Wisdom platform. Then you have a better way of redesigning strategies, reorienting your resources, and making organizational strategy setting in a different way. So for us, storytelling is like a very powerful way to drive that level of sustainable culture change aligned with business strategy.
yeah,
And that is a very radical shift to how we've done it, because it's been very left brain at the at a expense of people kind of approach. And I think we can take a human centered approach uh, to still get the business outcomes. And that's what we're trying to do with
yeah. So
storytelling.
what role is AI playing if people are using their real life stories? AI is What role is the AI having?
So AI currently gets into too much of generative and then summarization spaces, but there are so many other uses for it. So we have it in four ways. First is to make it more inclusive, meaning if you're telling stories, I ask the question, in which language are you talking? And in America, that tends to be one. But there are lots of other languages outside English that are spoken by much more number of
Right.
people. And we just take the approach of why force them to speak English? Let them speak in the language that they want to speak within their groups. That right there, voice to enabling voice, but then you have to make sense and rationalize it at the corporate level. And if, let's say, we're talking about corporate America, then I want it back in English. I love them to speak their language, but I want to understand it so that I can make
Right.
decisions in a language that I understand, given my constraints, which is English
I only
and
know
not
English.
Mandarin,
Right.
not Korean, not so. AI can do voice to text, then language to language translations, and that's been going on for us. So that is also part of what we do. So real time transcriptions, and then almost real time translations that we could do. Then when we start looking at let's start doing qualitative analytics from all of these narratives, so we can get to what are the categories which we're talking about. Then real time sentiment analysis. What are the keywords that are a hot topic for the team right now? What I just now asked is a human phraseology, but what really I'm trying to query across a very big data set of people telling stories. So how do I do that? Well, there's a lot of AI algorithms that will be in the middle trying to give you the answers for the question, just like this is what I'm trying to do. Previously, you had to tell that as an exec, then a product manager had to translate it, and then a dev had to code it, and then you'll see a report back, and then you have to make sense of the report. Right now, I'm just saying like that's 3 layers, which is just multiple AI
Right.
that we can just do that. The language models and then the algorithms are all different, but all that is all still AI that
Yeah.
we start bringing that in. So heat maps to look at it over time, comparisons that across your geo locations, and even time to see how are we doing for my people in this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year, and then what is the narratives that we can go deep in to understand why did that happen.
Yeah. All right. Very good. I know we have to close out, but I want to know about, first off, if someone's interested, how do they bring stories and wisdoms, or how do they talk with you about it? But before that, you're getting traction on this.
Mhm.
It's working, right? So what surprised you so far? Or like, what's your, not surprised in a like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, but like delighted you. How about let's use that word. What's delighted you so far as a use case? I know I don't want you to share anything that proprietary, or,
Yeah.
but what kind of
So
delights have you had?
we the, the ones that we had designed for were very private sector, everything that I talked about, culture transformation, usage in an employee resource group to help deepen connections, team offsites, company events, conferences, employee manager discussions. All of that is what we had. Like that makes sense. It's very HR technology,
Right.
enabling employees, L&D spaces. They all feed in there. But then we started getting a lot of interest in public sector and other spaces that I was so blind to, like enabling discussions so that mental health is now it can be relieved, not from a perspective of like I'm going to measure every one of it. It's just like I'm just going to be talking and connecting and reducing the baggage that I have, and realize that others have the same baggage, and I'm less lonely, and that suddenly goes from mental health towards suicide prevention. That you can very clearly go like there are multiple areas like schools,
Yeah.
colleges where these are massive ways to explore. Current solutions are watch a video, learn these things, watch another video. I'm not sure that prevents anything. You might get educated, but this is about connecting with cohorts and then helping you connect with each other, understand, empathize, and reframe how you're thinking about it. Then discussions which are tougher to have around ableism with a focus around disability awareness without the need for anybody with a disability to disclose. That's a major topic because previously you would have to sort of indirectly share your disability to increase awareness with a personal nature. Like, here's what happened with my kid, and therefore I'm an activist, and
Right.
now you want to be listening. Why disclose to get that? Because the reason that situation happened is there because it's because of a situation of ableism in place structurally. but can we actually solve for that without having the need to disclose, because it's kind of sticky for an individual to do that, but they were forcing them to. And then even what surprised me really in this in the last few weeks is enabling faith-based discussions across generations, because more and more younger kids, they would want a game, they would want a digital, and then the spirit and faith discussions is like, okay, grandpa, I'll come to church, okay, mom, I'll come to that. And then it's almost like a checkbox, mom, I can't get my
Yeah.
evening whatever till I do this. but that's not
Yeah.
actual learning, that's forced. However, if you enable narratives and start to connect across generations, which gamification and storytelling can do, then this gets into some interesting faith-based enablement, which again was not where we were going, but you can see how that same
Yeah.
infrastructure gets into some use cases, which just surprised me in terms of some interest areas.
I love it because, there is most definitely, again, not stereotyping, but there is research, and I've read numerous articles about the next generation are saying no to, and they always have, right? Each generation has said no to their parents,
Mhm.
but they're not just willing to accept as is. And the stories is a fascinating way to just share uh both sides. Really good. I like it. Hadn't thought about that. All right. So, and anybody, no matter what kind of entity, could really be using. I mean, because again, I'm not going to go back and say the government entity, but when I say anything, if we go faith based and then we go as far as we can in the other direction, that's about as far as those two are from each other, right?
Right.
So, um, if somebody wants to see about doing the stories and wisdoms program, what do you call it? How do you, initiative?
Yeah,
And
so an easy way in which getting in is actually engaging with us. So I'm just leaning towards how do people bring us in where there are already pockets of money or budgets that can be easily engaged? Because bringing us into an infrastructure play and then saying we'll help you in culture transformation or like a systematized HR tech, that's a 18-month ordeal for them and us to get into the
right,
organization. However, to actually say, I have an offsite coming up and then I need an event, can you actually do, here's the budget we have, it gets us in very quickly to enable either it's an analog kind of approach. That's the analog is what I
right,
had written up for the for our GamiCon.
right. Which is great. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
yeah,
we would do that, and then we would do a half a day workshop or even a whole day workshop with a keynote talk. And our responses have been like on a scale of 1 to 10, we've gotten like 9.2, 9.4 score. Like it's just been off the charts. And
hmm,
but more importantly, the stakeholder starts to get to like, well, that's just 20 people, but I want this in my division. Then they call us back again in the next quarter. And then they're like, why am I paying you all this? I mean, I want it for the global, and you keep doing bullet point stuff. I wanted, and like I told them, well, yeah, we got AI, yeah, we have analytics, but you can see how I have the stakeholders already now reaching out to their next level of leadership. But very quickly, when we reach out from there, they're bringing IT or procurement along with like, okay, we got to make sure that the contracting is taken care of, but we need that. Go figure it out.
yeah,
Compared to if you try to do the big sale up front, what we realize is like we just get stopped by the systems in place in the organization.
yeah,
They just don't allow innovation to come in. So,
no,
but the approach to get in is really, do you have an icebreaker? Do you have a team offsite? Do you have a event or a conference where you would need something to come in, engage, and you'll customize the experience? That's been super easy for people to get this in, but slowly start to see the stakeholders starting to shift. And if this lines up with your projects, then it's also seen their careers starting to get an interesting boost, because now they get to be part of this as a inside champion for their projects within their company. So it's been a win-win in the areas that we've with the customers that we've gone in, but this has been how it's happened.
yeah. It's a great time of the year for this too, as we think about. We all have that optimist gene. 2024 is going to be better. It's new things are going to happen, new doors are going to open, and But what are we going to do with all that? So as we're closing out one and opening another, it's a great time to really just get that transparency and the ideation. And if there is any, it doesn't even have to be bad conflict. I think conflict can be good, but we still have to decide where we're going then, right? So, all right, where are we going? We're going here. So that's really good. I love it. Pradeep, thank you so much for sharing. Again, the website is Stories Wisdom. So plural stories, STORIES wisdom.com. And you can connect with Pradeep there. I've done a couple walkthroughs with it, and it's just, every time you see it, you just think, wow, this is good. It's innovative. It's different. It's compelling. It makes you squirm a little bit, but in a good way, not from a fear, because fear shuts everything down, but from, oh, we can go further. We can get to a further place than we've been. So very good. Very nice. Thank you so much for being here, Pradeep. I really appreciate you. Is there anything I'm missing that we should add before we close out?
I think we covered all the high points, but for your listeners, because I've listened to a few of the episodes, I think it's really about reinforcing that, like, the torch that they're carrying is a very important one. It might feel lonely, but then there is a fellowship out here that we're doing it together, and I think be at it with courage, have grit, which I'm sure they already do, but that's gamification language for like, the fellowship will keep growing, and we will get to our destination together.
Yeah,
And
together.
And then I think thank you for leading that charter and for this podcast, and then inviting me again to your family.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to when I can introduce you as Pradeep, my very good friend, right? Rather than a colleague that I've gotten to be in the perimeter with for a couple events and just observe and watch and listen. But it's been enjoyable so far, and I look forward to a significant collaboration. I think it would be, and I just think I can't think of one type of entity that this is not a great fit for, right? So really good. Thank you again. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much, Pradeep. Bye-bye. And for those of you listening, check back. We'll have another podcast being released within a week or so. And like Pradeep, I bring guests on who are doing research or doing design or just getting out there, really not risk that's life threatening, but just risking putting their ideas out there to see how they can put an end to dull, ineffective, boring training or initiatives within organizations that just simply aren't working. So join us again for another Gamification Quest podcast. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
This has been an episode of the Gamification Quest, brought to you by Sententia Inc. If you enjoyed this presentation, click the thumbs up button below and share your comments. If you'd like to stay in the conversation, click subscribe and ring the bell. You'll be alerted when another episode is released or when we upload an informative video on the gamification of learning. And thanks for all you do to put an end to dull, dry, boring learning experiences.